At a point or the other, you must have been in a situation whereby you pick up a book or a textbook and you try to read something and it seems as if you are learning a foreign language. You stared at the book for hours and only to discover that you didn't learn anything at all. You are not alone because years ago, I was actually in your situation. I could not understand anything I learned at any point in time, not until I found a solution, which I'll be sharing with you in today's video, and it will help you study once and understand faster. I am Abayomi, and right here on this channel, I drop in tips and strategies that can help you as a student learn better and improve in your academics. And if that sounds like something you're interested in, please subscribe to my channel right now. One significant way you can actually study once and understand faster is to connect anything you want to learn. Anytime you want to learn something, connecting what you learn is the best way you can actually get in anything you want to learn and actually understand. When you connect information, you are trying to seek prior knowledge from anything that you've learned in the past, and this will actually make you understand well. That is why it is important to take into consideration the foundational knowledge of any concepts that you are trying to learn, because this is the only way you can actually connect information and make you study once and understand faster. Without that, it will be very difficult for you to understand, and in fact, you turn out to start memorizing and cramming. So on this video, I'm going to be shedding more light on how this happens in the brain by explaining the discovery by neuroscientists, and I'll be going on the board to show you the illustration. Then afterwards, I'll be showing you how exactly you can make these connections and how you can use it to learn faster and understand faster by studying once. And don't forget to subscribe as you go on. Now, take for example, you are trying to learn calculus in mathematics. Now, when you are trying to learn calculus, there are prior knowledge that you need to know before you be able to understand calculus. You must be able to understand algebra, you must be able to understand functions and how they relate to each other. You must be able to understand trigonometry, you must be able to understand the concept of limits, you must be able to understand series and sequence, you must be able to understand logarithm and exponentials. So if you understand each of these concepts, that is when you'll be able to learn calculus well. And I'll be explaining to you on how the neuroscience has actually explained this. Whenever you learn something, the brain changes physically. Anytime you learn something, you make connections, and we have what we call neurons. We have what we call neurons, and at any point in time when you learn something, you make new neurons in your brain, and these neurons actually look like trees. You can see it in the picture there. They look like trees. Take for example, this is just for the sake of analogy. You can have a particular tree like this that has different branches, and this represents different experiences and different things that you've learned in the past. These each neurons that you've made represent each of the prior knowledge, functions, exponential, logarithmic, and all sorts that you've learned, and these are different neurons. This is A, this is neuron A, this is neuron B. This is a particular tree. Just for the sake of analogy, you can see it on the screen, it looks better. This is B. When you are learning calculus, your brain will always want to tap from the existing knowledge, which is your functions, your exponential, and your logarithmic, and your concept of limits. If you don't have it in your neuron A, that is the prior knowledge, and you are trying to learn calculus, there is nothing for it to connect with, and you'll be confused. That's why it is very important for you to know foundational knowledge. Now, if you know the foundations and you are trying to learn calculus, if you encounter any problem in logarithm or in exponential, you pick up from here and it will connect to this place and you understand better. But when you don't have previous knowledge, you'll not be able to connect, and there will be problem. And that is where you have to go back to your foundation, and that is why you'll be able to understand. Now, in a situation whereby you don't have prior knowledge and you're trying to learn calculus, which is B, and there's nothing for it to connect with, this is where you now want to memorize, because you don't have the existing knowledge and you really want to pass your exam. Then you want to memorize, and you can't depend on memorization. So what we want to do here is for you to be able to learn the foundational knowledge and be able to learn new concepts, which is calculus. Now, continuing our explanation, Now, take for example, you have the prior knowledge. Now, you have the prior knowledge. You have the level, the knowledge of limits, the knowledge of functions, the knowledge of algebra, and you are trying to learn calculus. Now, when the connection is happening, this is what we call synaptic connection. Now, the synapses are in between here. When you are learning something, you are making synaptic connection, and these are very, you can see it on the screen, they are tiny, they look very tiny. Now, when you learn something at the first instance, the synaptic connections, they are not very strong because you are trying to learn, and this is where you get to the stage of you sort of understand it is not very clear yet, but then you still have to keep learning it. When I get to the stages of learning, you understand what I mean by sort of when we get there. Now, the more you now encounter this thing that you are learning over and over again, it makes more sense to you, and this synaptic connection will begin to fire. They'll be firing these neural patterns. They'll be firing to each other because you've encountered it a lot of times, so it becomes stronger. So that is when they say nerve cells that wire together. These are nerve cells. Nerve cells that wire together fire together. So the more you repeat, the more you encounter, the more you revisit it, it becomes very strong in such a way that it won't be able to prune apart. But if you don't use the information for a long time, they will prune apart, they will leave each other, and it will be very hard for you to come back and learn it. So you can't learn anything in isolation, and your brain is not a box so you can just drop information. So you always have to depend on things that you've known before. So that is that. So I hope you understand. So let's get into the video as I explain the stages of learning, which is elaborative interrogation. Now, elaborative interrogation is a learning strategy that can help you learn something by asking the why question and the how question. Now, anytime you are learning something, you should always ask the why and the how question. This is the only way you can learn deeply, and this will make more meaning to you. Instead of surface learning, you should always ask the why and the how question. Now, and there are several stages that can help you do this, and I'll be exposing to you these several stages as we go on in this video. Now, the first stage is confusion stage. The second stage is the encounter stage. The third stage is the reflective stage. The fourth stage is the pruning stage, and the fifth stage is the reinforcement stage. And don't forget to subscribe as you go on. Now, I could remember when I was trying to learn a particular concept in secondary school, which is the perfect competitive market then. At this point, I was very confused about the concept because I saw so many graphs, I saw so many mathematical formula, I saw so many things that I could not understand. And at this point, I felt like giving up. And at this stage, students are very vulnerable at this stage, and they tend to fall into the trap of memorization because of the fact that they could not understand what they are seeing and it looks like a foreign language. Everybody passed through this stage. Even the most brilliant people and the smart people actually encounter this state of confusion, because this is when you actually encounter something very new. And you should not give up at this stage, and you should not declare that you don't know it. This is where you now go to the second stage, which is the stage of encounter. Now, you have to encounter what you are learning by sort out different explanation, mean quality explanation, not only the one that you got from the classroom, not only the one that you got from your colleagues, but also the ones that you get from videos from the internet, from different textbooks. You have to actually sort out different information, and this is where you are trying to prime your brain. You are trying to gather enough information, and this is where you get to a point whereby you have a little flash in your brain and you'll be like, oh, I got this, but then you don't still get it enough. You are not still, it's not still solid yet, and you still have a sort of understanding, but it's not yet clear. And for you to make it clear enough, this is where you now go to the next stage. If you are really getting value from this video, please subscribe to the channel and also like the video. Now let's go into the next point, which is the reflection stage. Now, this reflection stage is the stage where you tend to apply what you learn to real life experience. You tend to apply it to things around you. You tend to make sense out of it. You tend to look at it in a different way. You tend to ask the why and the what question. And this is the stage where elaborative interrogation comes along, because this is where you tend to ask, why is this like this? Why is this like this? How is it like this? And this is where you apply it to different experiences and different things that you've learned before and different experiences. And most especially when I was learning this concept as at that time, this is where I was able to go into the market. I was able to reflect. I was able to look at it in a very different way beyond the conceptual knowledge that I learned in the book. I was able to look at it in different ways. Then after the elaborative interrogation, that is the reflection stage, that's when you go through the pruning stage. Now the pruning stage is a stage whereby it's a stage of skepticism. You tend to question what you learn. You tend to deconstruct, you tend to construct, you tend to remove, you tend to put together some things, you tend to make distinctions, you tend to make contradictions about some certain things, and that is where it becomes more clear to you, and that is where you can actually look at, okay, since perfect markets is a market in which the prices are determined by the forces of demand and supply. In the monopoly market, it is determined by an individual. So this is where you have to make these clear distinctions. And from the pruning stage, you now go through the reinforcement stage. At this reinforcement stage, this is where you have a whole bit of understanding, and this is where you are ready to actually apply the information and make sense out of it. And at this reinforcement stage, this is where memory consolidation comes in, and this is where you'll be able to lock in into the long time memory. This is where you'll be able to answer a lot of questions, and this is where you actually solidify the understanding more. So anytime you want to understand or make connection out of anything, if you go through these 5 stages, I bet you are going to understand anything faster and study once. So if you apply everything that I explained in this video, you should be able to study once and understand faster at any point in time. So thank you so much for watching, and you can also check out this video on how exactly you can actually study more in less time. So thank you so much, and see you on the next video.